Waterfall, the CCW podcast.
Hello and welcome to Waterfall. It's the Water Saving podcast brought to you by CCW. That's the Consumer Council for Water. Waterfall is all about saving water, saving money, protecting the environment and combating climate change. I'm Mike and I am here with the wonderful co-host is Karen. Hiya, Karen.
Hello, Mike. How are you?
I am good, ready for action. This is a really exciting episode because this is our best of the guests. But before we get into that, of course, he's here as ever. It's producer Tom. Hello, Tom.
Hi, Mike. Hi, Karen. Hi, listeners.
Karen and I are suffering from microphone envy because Karen and I are recording on our iPhones and Tom's got a massive new microphone. So there we are. We feel inferior.
Yeah. No Freudians need write in to podcast at ccwater.org.uk, but hopefully I'm sounding clear.
Anyway, this is our best of the guests episode, and we have got tons of stuff to share with you from our third season. It was a really, really insightful season with loads of thoughtful guests with some great practical tips on how to save water and why we should save water. And there were some pretty good themes coming through, I thought, as well, from this season, because we had some campaigners on, and a real diversity there. We had campaigners who were in their 8th decade of life, campaigning furiously, and some very fresh-faced campaigners too. We had 2 professors on. We were getting a bit highbrow. Look at us. Karen, what did you make of that?
It was really good that we were able to invite people who are real authorities on their topics. And, you know, that really opened up some real insight into some of the issues that we've been trying to grapple with through the podcast.
Yeah, some really fantastic insights, as you say, coming through from having the professors on, and we'll be hearing from both of them later on. Of course, one of the other themes is, the trauma that we all suffered from after our kickoff episode of the season, which was Waterfall Live, which was slightly chaotic. Karen, have you recovered yet, and are you suffering from PTSD?
Well, I must admit it was quite the experience, a bit of a white knuckle ride, if I'm honest, but it was great fun, and I think we got a lot from it. And as we'll be hearing later on, some really good insight.
Oh, it was fun/terrifying, but as you say, great guests on there, and the audience were fantastic as well. We learned a lot from the audience too, which was great, which is what it's all about as well, sharing that learning on why and how to save water. Now, before we get stuck into the clips, let's just remind our listeners that you can get in touch with the show.
You can email us at podcast@ccwater.org.uk.
And you can find us on social media by looking at the CCW channel, so that's CCW Voice. So just search on that and you will find us. Right, let's get into it. Let's get into these clips. We're going to start with the future, because, future is so important, in terms of what happens to our water resources, and it's, incredibly fragile, and what happens with climate change really, really matters to the water resources that we rely on every day. So the first clip we're going to hear is Professor Rich Allan. And I think we all really liked hearing from Rich, because he was just so knowledgeable. That episode was number 61, which was called Climate Change, Turbocharging the Water Cycle. And then we're going to stick with the future theme, because we've got episode number 60, which was called Tapping Into Tomorrow, which featured young people, so A-level students who were involved in Wessex Water's Young People panel. And they're talking about the task that they were doing. So let's get those clips on the themes of the future. Karen and I have certainly talked about this quite a bit, that in the eyes of, a lot of people, it's confusing. So it's getting very wet, and it's getting very dry. So I'm being told to be careful about my water, but there appears to be tons of it. And there's an apparent contradiction in there, which does make communicating some of this stuff quite difficult. From your point of view, as a scientist, has the challenge of communicating this got easier over the years, or has it just become a complete morass of issues?
It has actually got a lot easier, but that's more from the sense that I remember in the early 2000s, there was a lot of pushback from climate skeptics I can remember being invited to give what seemed to be a fairly harmless outreach talk at a school in West Berkshire on their Environment Day. The teacher obviously was a bit of a climate skeptic, and he had invited along, I don't know if you remember, Christopher Monckton, who actually worked in Margaret Thatcher's government, but then became this big kind of climate skeptic kind of figure. And so he was there basically just rubbishing and undermining everything I said. And so, there were these issues that you had back then that the whole basis of your career was questioned by people that had other interests. Like, for example, they might have had vested interests in being able to emit lots of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. So it has got easier in a communication sense from back then, because I think the science is so overwhelming. It's so clear now that humans are causing practically all of the warming that we're already seeing, and a whole lot more warming that we're going to get in the future. And we've got to act rapidly and massively to cut greenhouse gas emissions. Otherwise, these extremes of wet and dry are just going to become worse and worse.
Wow, so 8 weeks to create a manifesto on how you can help build trust amongst Wessex Water customers. So this was a challenge against other teams. So there was 4 other teams, and you are the winning team.
Yeah.
So well done. Are you basking in the glory?
We've got some
Quite
chocolates,
surprised, yeah.
Well, to be fair, I do pretty much anything for chocolate, so that's good. And I was on a judging panel, and your team was fantastic, and a great name, Sewage Squad.
I was quite happy with that. We came up and when we
Best part of
first
the whole
became a
thing.
team.
Who came up with the name?
Who was it? I feel like...
Didn't you do it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think you did that.
Yeah.
Well, it shows you this is quite interesting team dynamic here. That you're all trying to give each other credit, which is a nice. So just give us a gist of what your winning entry covered. How can you build trust? What's the secret ingredient?
So we focused on, I study psychology at A-level, and I wanted to link it quite towards that, because I think customer trust is something you have to build a relationship, and there's just so much behind that. But for the aspects of Wessex Water, I think we focused on environment, biodiversity, net zero, our people, which is employees, and then also customer engagement, I think it was.
Yeah, customer.
Yeah, so we mainly focused on those, came up with quite a few different aspects. I think we didn't mainly focus on one, it's kind of just a whole variety and how they all link back to trust. And
we made a couple of policies, like the customer liaisons and the outreach programs as well.
Yeah.
We tried linking everything back to people, because that's the main way you can build trust. So we had things like customer forests, where Wessex Water would sponsor people to go and volunteer and plant trees and, absorb carbon dioxide.
So great hearing about the future there. Pivoting on to campaigning, we flagged this just a second ago. We had some campaigners on the pod, and I found they were really inspirational, because these are just people who are so focused on trying to make a positive difference and genuine inspiration to us all. And they were campaigning on very different things. We had Tim Harris, who was on episode 50 on Norfolk Broadsides, campaigning for the Broads and the Fens to be better protected from over abstraction. And then we had Surfers Against Sewage, campaigning on something completely different, which is about cleaner rivers and seas. And they were Danny and Annie from Surfers Against Sewage were on talking about their app. Karen, are you thinking of pivoting to a life of furious campaigning?
I think the thing that it brought home to me was these are people that have identified an issue or a problem and have actively taken it on board to do something about it. And I can only take my hat off to people like that who really prepared to get stuck in.
Can I ask you a couple of questions just on this? You had experts in to confirm that the fen was being damaged, right? Had you noticed that yourselves before the experts confirmed this?
We had noticed the fen had got drier, but neither my wife or I we now know what to look for, and we were concerned. But it was the Norfolk and Norwich naturalists who said, we are seriously concerned about this, and they're people who knew what they were talking about. We then got in some top hydrologists and ecologists, and they confirmed it. And the Dutch professor came in, and said, I've seen this before in Holland and elsewhere. And the reason is you change the balance of the water between alkaline and acid, and that's what's causing the problem. Unfortunately, and this is a sad thing, none of the public bodies really, why this had to be done by us, by ourselves, is an interesting question.
Who did you take to a public inquiry?
Well, we have taken legal action. We threatened the Environment Agency with legal action, and we gave them 7-day notice of it, and they then cancelled the licences. That was then appealed by the NFU to protect the agricultural licences, but they lost the appeal, and the case became a landmark ruling within the whole of water protection in this country. It's now a landmark decision because it demonstrated the link between water abstraction and damage to wetlands. Confirmed it.
We really like what you're trying to do with the app. So can you just tell us a bit about that? How did it come about?
Yeah, so the app, it started sort of over 10 years ago as a text alert service for 2 local beaches in Cornwall. Essentially, they would tell us when there was a sewage discharge and we would notify the surfers subscribed. And since then, it's just escalated, and obviously we've been able to access a lot of data for a lot of locations. So now I've got 450 across the UK. And it's much more than that. You know, you can subscribe, know when it's safe to swim, scout out local beaches, find information. It's great for families and coming down on holiday, and then it's also great for water users and campaigners because you can email your local MP or submit a health report if you've been made sick. So it's been an invaluable tool for us, and I think an invaluable tool for water users for the past sort of 5-10 years as well.
How do you go about getting all of that data into the app? I'm assuming you don't send people around to beaches to look for discharges as they happen.
Yeah, it varies. Essentially, water companies started sending emails to beach owners to be able to notify them, and we built a national system to be able to read those emails. So we just subscribed. So kind of like the beach guardians of every beach subscribe to all their email notifications. It's not a very good system because the data is obviously, we're reading something that's meant for a human, but it allowed us to, hold all that information in one place, and it's coming from the water companies, so it's not something we are sort of providing. It's confirmed discharges straight from them. And we also incorporate, where we can, pollution risk forecasts from regulators. The Environment Agency has been doing it for a long time, and now we've seen it in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, so we really are sort of UK-wide alert service, which is fantastic. Yeah.
As we all know, Waterfall is absolutely focused on water saving. That is why we exist. That's why we're here. And the next couple of clips are really focused on that core water saving message with some really, really practical stuff there. And Karen, I think both these guests bring a bit of twinkle to your eye. You've got a soft spot for these guys because we got Andrew Tucker on from Thames Water talking about Leaky Loos, and then Tony V from episode number 53, which was Tony's Water Saving Odyssey. And Tony V, let's just remind people who Tony V was, Karen.
Well, Tony's our American listener who
got more than one.
Well, I'm being modest. But the great thing about Tony is that he's been able to apply some of the tips and advice that we've been providing through the podcast, and has really been able to successfully reduce his water use at home. So, it's really good to see that some of the stuff that we're suggesting is actually having an impact.
Yeah, it's very impressive what he's done. What you failed to mention there, Karen, is that Tony V hangs on your every word.
Well, I couldn't say a word.
The other tip is taking cold showers. I may have been able to do that when I was younger, but I'm going to be 63 years old, and I take my showers at night. So taking a cold shower at night is, runs counter to one's attempt to relax. Maybe in the morning, taking a cold shower might be more appropriate because you want to be alert for the day. And then the older I get, the more aging and achy my muscles become, and cold showers are not conducive for that.
So basically, in summary, all your tips that you're doing are things Karen said All the things you're ignoring are things I've said. This is interesting.
Yeah, yes, but you may have said it afterwards. You know, or Karen's voice is just a lot more pleasing to my ears. So it's what she says will stick with me, and then I just simply let what you say come out the other ear.
I have that effect on people. Interesting what you're saying about weeing in the shower, though, because there may be married people who are adopting the weeing in the shower, and then they may not be married in a few months, a year's time because of it.
Yep, that's correct. Conserve water, but marriages will suffer.
What were you finding out from your smart meter data?
Well, traditionally in an old school meter world, you'd get maybe 1 or 2 meter reads a year. We're now getting 24 reads a day from those smart meters. So you're learning a lot about water use and water loss. And on the water loss side, from our household that have a smart meter, about 9% of the homes never stop flowing. So they just constantly leak and lose water. So it's you look at it and go, oh God, it's really bad. It's a huge area of water loss. But at the same time, because we want to save water, it's identifying the opportunity to go for. Leaky Loos are probably the biggest part of that loss. So when we look across our smart meter household base today, about 5% of the continuous flow, so 5% of all the homes have a leaky loo. And that's supported from our smart meter data, but also we've been into over 320,000 homes with our own water efficiency visits. So we go into homes and retrofit water saving devices. At the same time, we'll fix leaky loos and dripping taps and showers, but leaky loos are the big part of that equation. So 5% of our housing stock is about 195,000 homes. You multiply that by the average leaky loo of about 250 litres a day, all of a sudden we're close on 50 million litres a day being lost in our area through a loo. That number is obviously bigger when you extrapolate it across the nation. It's a huge amount of water. It represents a big part of, if you could engineer out this problem, it represents a big part of DEFRA's new national water target, which wants to reduce the amount of water that we all abstract and put into supply. So it's a huge loss of water. It's a relatively simple thing, but we've got to do a lot of stuff in every home and every business to fix it.
We also this season looked at innovation and different ways of doing things in order to help people save water or just to think differently about saving water. And we had a really fascinating episode. And this was the one that featured LeakBot, which I think really grabbed people's attention with that title. And that was episode 59, and Craig Foster was the guest from LeakBot. And our clip will explain a bit more about what LeakBot is, but that was a fascinating episode. As was the next clip you're going to hear as well, which was Colin Strong from Ipsos Mori, the pollsters, who had done a lot of work for CCW on looking at emotional reactions to water-saving messages. So that's in our episode called Gloom and Bloom. Always love a bit of innovation. What do you think, Karen?
Yes, I think again, this brought home to me the fact that it's not just all about innovation and new techniques and technical devices and things. It is also about people changing behaviours, but the two need to go together hand in glove for us to be successful in what we need to achieve in terms of water saving and reducing the impact on the environment. So it was great to see both angles addressed in these two clips.
I think the first question to ask is, Sasha, Craig, what is LeakBot?
Hi, Kath. I'll
over to you on that one, Craig.
Yeah, so it's a system that we invented, and it's a new way of detecting household leaks. So it's essentially a small sensor, and it's small enough we can just pop it on the post and send it to someone, and you just basically clip it to the pipe. So you don't need a plumber, and that small device can detect a leak anywhere on the mains water system in a house. And it's really sensitive. So it'll detect a leak down to just a few drops, basically, down to about 3 millilitres per minute. And then what we've done is we've integrated a plumbing service. So if we detect a leak in the app, you can then book one of our plumbers to come and find and fix the leak. So that is essentially what LeakBot is. So we originally designed it for the insurance industry, but then more recently, over time, we realised it has a big water efficiency benefit as well as preventing. We actually designed it initially to stop claims on home insurance, and then further down the path, we've ended up working with water companies. But in a nutshell, that's what LeakBot is.
So if Karen was coming to you with and saying, right, I've now got a gazillion pounds to spend on a really comprehensive water efficiency messaging campaign, what would you say to Karen in terms of the learning points from this project that she should be really taking heed of?
I think what we should do then is to just think about the way in which we can start blending emotional messages to drive adoption. So it may be that things such as anxiety alongside anger and sort of outrage about the situation which we're in can really be motivating emotions and can get things done, whilst it may be that in other situations, if we're not careful, then people can feel rightly proud of the steps they've taken and content that they're doing all they can in order to save, make savings. But then we still need people to do more. So really, I'd say that there is just think through, look, what are the emotions which are going to catch fire, which are going to enable action, and which work together. And I think we've got some suggestions as to what direction those sorts of things go in. And really, I think, to Anna's point is that, we can have the sort of call to action messages, which may well be quite, creating an anxiety response, but have that alongside some clear, tangible guidance.
Now, we do an occasional series of around the world features where we look at water use around the world and the challenges that are faced. And these episodes have been very, very popular. Some of our most popular Waterfall episodes have been our Around the World series. I feel we should be playing a little clip of Around the World from Daft Punk there, Tom. I think you can
I can get that done, yeah, that's a problem.
That's a tune as well. One of my favourite episodes from this season was episode 54, which was all about Colombia, and in particular, something that happened in the 90s there. And you're going to hear a bit about this in the clip, which featured two people who are from Colombia, CCW's very own Anna Milan, and then Luis Botero, who's a professor in Bogota. And that was such a great episode.
Yes, and it shows just how people, when they work together collectively, can make a big difference.
Oh, this is really fascinating. So what's the, so how long did the emergency last for? Well, until they repaired the tunnels and got back to a more sort of sustainable situation.
About 2 months?
Yeah, after 3 months, it was, more or less. But people start to get conscious. There was an incident before that in 1997. Do you remember, Anna? It was called when the electricity shut down. It was because of El Nino event. We used to have 85% of hydropower here in Colombia for the electricity, and in 1992, all the reservoirs were without water, and we have to shut down the electricity. So people, that event from 1992, they have it here in mind. It was also to do with water, right? And then in 1997 again, so people were more or less prepared and get conscious about where are we bringing water. No, we are bringing water from a very, it's the hotspot of biodiversity in tropical Andes. It's the Paramos ecosystems where we are bringing the water. So people are very conscious about that. And I think every time more, that we are bringing water from the Paramos.
Well, that's really interesting because you had basically had two very big events within the space of just a few years that really hit home just how important water resources are for our daily lives. So in this series of Waterfall, we've done a bit of a deviation. Probably you could call that rewiggling, in fact, of where we go in terms of topics covered. And we looked at rewiggling rivers. Now, that may on the face of it not seem obvious about why that's connected to water saving, but there's some really clear lessons in there. And you'll be hearing in a second from Tessa Wardley, and that's from episode number 52. Plus, we do love diving down to the sewers. One of my favourite topics is the toilets, and then what happens after the toilet. So we're hearing from Stephen Williams from Southern Water, who's talking about clearing up fog, that's fats, oils and greases. I do like in that episode, if you listen to the whole lot, how he gets slightly threatening at times.
I believe he's an ex-copper, so yeah, there's that edge to it. It's great.
That's right, yeah. You listen to the whole episode and he explains all this. So if you're baffled by what we've just said, do check out episode 55. But first we're going to hear from Tessa Wardley on the episode on Rewiggling Rivers.
Picking up on something that you mentioned earlier about, the sensitivity to, particularly the chalk streams, to drought conditions, I wonder, what you feel needs to happen to kind of help those rivers, become more drought resilient, if you like?
I mean, there are lots of things that can help rivers become more drought resilient, but a healthy river will be naturally more resilient to drought. So it's really about a case of restoring our rivers to being the most healthy they can be, because healthy rivers wind their way through the landscape. They have pools and riffles, meanders, and they have a nice balance of plants and marginal vegetation. You'll have wetlands and boggy areas and natural barriers in fallen trees and things like that. And that means that the water slows down and is held in the river catchment area. And that means there's plenty of time for that water to percolate through the soil and down into the aquifers. So that water is, one, it's recharging the groundwaters and means that the river flows will stay stronger and there's water there for abstraction if needed. But it also means that water is not rushing through the landscape, causing erosion, loss of soils and potential flooding havoc as well. But the other thing that's important is not just that it's the river. People tend to think of the river very much as the river as a constrained body of water, but actually for healthy rivers, you have to have healthy catchments. So our rivers really reflect everything that's going on in the catchment. They really kind of hold up a mirror. And, with only 14% of our rivers being in good ecological status, I think that tells us something about the state of the way we're managing our land as well.
It makes my life easier when I don't pour fat down my sink, because I absolutely hated unblocking it. And of course, a lot of people don't know that actually that's where the most blockages in the U-bend underneath the kitchen sink come from. I just wondered, apart from if you're doing it yourself, that horrendous experience of scraping the stinky fat out, what's the cost? If you couldn't do it yourself and you'd block the U-bend or worse still, block the outside drain, what would it cost you to have that cleared?
Well, if we block the public sewer, there's obviously we're going to have to send a contractor out, one of our framework contractors out to clear that. So that's going to cost somewhere between probably 160 to 350 pounds, depending where the blockage is and how big it is. If you call out a contractor yourself for your own private drains, it's probably going to be a bit more than that. So it's a costly thing. I mean, our bills for unblocking drains run up to about £15 million a year at Southern Water.
And what would the cost be across all the companies then?
We estimate, and I've done a bit of research into this, it's probably between 180 million and 200 million pounds per year, clearing the sort of 400,000 blockages we have.
And so, if we get fat out of sewers by people not putting it down in the first place, or businesses not putting it down, all of that money, if not all of it, but some of it would come off customer bills.
Definitely. If we could stop that going in the sewers and causing the blockages, that's going to lift the burden on our customers paying those bills.
Wow. So we've covered a lot of ground here, haven't we? And we're at our final clip. And we're going to take you right back to the start, to our traumatic episode, which was Waterfall Live. Now, if you haven't listened to that episode, do check it out. It's number 49. Check it out and just listen to it through the lens of all of the Waterfall team feeling absolutely petrified. But it's a great episode in its chaos, because there are some really great things coming through. And one of the things we like to talk about on Waterfall is that link between our trust in water as a product, so we trust that it's safe to drink, and how we trust our water companies and the impact that can have on our own attitudes towards water saving.
Yes, and now we've got Nick Adjei, who is a Deputy Chief Inspector at the Drinking Water Inspectorate, talking about why that trust is so important. I just wondered if you could say a few words about why trust in tap water is so important, trust in the public water supply.
Yeah, trust in the public water supply I think is vital, because obviously we need water, for our general health and well-being. It's one of the staples that we can't do without as a society, and it's vital that people have the confidence not only in what's coming out of their taps, but also in the companies and organisations that are supplying it, and the regulation, that they have confidence, that companies are being held to account. If something goes wrong, they've got mechanisms by which they can complain, make their voices heard, and then have actions in terms of regulatory action, enforcement action that sort of has an appropriate impact to make sure things are improved in future. So I think, we talked about in the sort of previous session about bottled water. There are a whole range of arguments about why it's best not to drink bottled water as a regular sort of consumptive thing. But it has its place, particularly when we have shortages and need alternative supplies due to incidents. But I think it's important to remember, and I always say this to the younger members of the family, run out and buy bottled water despite my urgings for them not to. The industry that provides bottled water will never provide enough bottled water in comparison to what you can get out of the tap, and what our sort of water undertakers deliver in terms of quality, the efficiency, the cost, they're just incomparable, so, having trust and confidence in our drinking water is paramount, I think.
So that was Nick Adjei there from our episode number 49, which was Waterfall Live.
Yeah, and it was great to hear from Nick. And I think he made a really good point about how fundamental, our tap water is to our daily lives. It touches every activity pretty much that we undertake, but how good to reflect on the fact that we do tend to take it for granted. So it's really important that maybe we take it a bit of time to think about just how valuable that water source is.
Absolutely. And that's what really came through in that Colombia episode. You don't really appreciate it until it's not there, or the threat of it not being there is clear and present. So a really good one to wrap up on. So that was our episode on the best of the guests. Season 3 has been really sort of pushed the boundaries of where we've gone with Waterfall. As we said right at the start, loads of insight there. Mainly coming from the guests, not much from me, quite a lot from Karen, and you basically get the jibber jabber from me and Tom. But watch out for another compilation that's going to come soon, which is just our best bits as well, which is Karen, Tom, and Kath, whose co-host is not here today, will be picking our favourite clips as well. So there's another one to watch out for, which will be another nice summary of season 3. So thank you for listening to Waterfall. Don't forget you can get in touch with the show.
Yes, you can email us on podcast@ccwater.org.uk.
And don't forget to check us out on socials. You can just search for CCW Voice and you will find us there. So don't forget, watch out for the second of our compilation episodes, and new Waterfall will be coming back in the spring. So that's it. That's it from me, Mike.
Goodbye from me, Karen.
And goodbye from me, producer Tom. Bye.